So this week was Forza Motorsport Review Week. We had Oliver on the main console review there, and then Alex dropped his massive PC tech review, which was really interesting, right?
Yeah.
There's I don't know what to say about this. The game is great, right? Undeniably, the game is great, but there are issues there. Some might say it's sort of low-hanging fruit that should be easily resolved. But what's coming to the fore now is that people are actually revisiting, in actual fact, Oliver did this in his piece, revisiting the original marketing, which is showing ray tracing features, which, and let's be honest here, have been severely curtailed for the final release of the game.
Yeah.
We're now seeing head-to-head comparisons emerge, and here's some footage of that. John, do you want to talk us through this? Because I'm reminded of those Forza Horizon materials that came out, which showed ray tracing effects that weren't in the game, and it was not great, right? And we called out Playground about it. But this is arguably worse because the debut footage for Forza Motorsport with the ray tracing in there looked absolutely phenomenal, and claims were made, and the final game arrives, and you are getting ray tracing on track, but you're not getting anything that's really like that original experience from a ray tracing perspective.
Yeah, I do kind of take issue with so obviously doing ray tracing in a game like this in gameplay, it's a heavy thing, right? This is not a simple task. And what they've done, I think they've done well, and they've targeted the console platform with what it can handle, right? Although there's also the argument that perhaps the PC version should have gone a bit further. But, when you look at this trailer, you're really thinking like they're going all out with ray trace reflections. Like the quality of those reflections is very high. Resolution is high. The full environment seems to be beautifully reflected against the car. Everything's there. But as we know in the final game, it's more, the ray tracing is only drawn within a small sphere around your car and only really on like shiny paint surfaces, right? And anything like a meter or two away from the car, it either falls back to cube maps, SSR, or something else, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you see all those videos going around of like the night racing with the wet track, right? And it's all like everybody's like, yeah, ray tracing, but it's all just SSR, and it's
literally just all SSR.
It's kind of funny, but also like it does make you think like, wait, maybe SSR works pretty well in some games, like racing games like this. But
I want to say like the
ahead,
camera angle, like I was playing the game and I was like thinking like SSR, because if you play in the hood mode, like sorry, not the hood mode, sorry, like when
first
you're in
person?
the actual cockpit, first person.
Oh, the cockpit,
like,
yeah.
And I was playing the game at night, and every single time the windshield wipers would go, like in the rain, the entire reflection on the street ahead of me would disappear because of the windshield.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's
and so like obviously SSR has extreme limits, and I would say for like on the car body itself, I tend to notice it in Forza, like when you go like, because there's something weird that's going on with like the cube maps in the game, where like when you move forward on like I don't know, like just any car that has like glass on it, like the cube maps become all pixelated when you move under things. I don't know if you see it. That's not the RT actually, interestingly enough. I don't think so. I don't know. I feel like whatever they showed there, they were like side by side with that like reflection on the side of the car, like it is just like, yes, it's perfectly mirror like, but it's also like really high res, and it's lacking things like in this game, in the release version, if you look at like the RT reflections on the side of cars, they're pretty blurry and they have a lot of temporal lag in them.
Yeah.
And so for me, I'm just disappointed in the end at the release of this game, beyond the issues all the PC version has. You can watch my entire video there. Is that it feels like they set out like this high bar, and it like slowly got clawed back in PR over time, like, and up until like right before the game released, like where things like RTGI were scrubbed out of like the stuff, like the information about the stuff about PC Online, which left a very bad taste in my mouth. The fact that they showed off the game multiple times with like wishy-washy wording about like what is actually ray tracing on track, because they kept showing off footage where there was quite obviously no ray tracing in it and stuff like that. So like, yeah.
Another thing on that, Alex, that bothers me is like the ray tracing implementation we see remains consistent even in the replays, right? The replays
Right.
drop down to 30 frames per second. And it would have been nice if they expanded the ray trace reflections to be much more robust in the 30 FPS mode on the cars, because GT7 does do that, right? Its ray tracing features are significantly more advanced, but they're also a lot more demanding. So you can see why they wouldn't have used those in game, right? No way they could get that at 60, but 30, like,
Right.
expand that out and allow like more of the environment to be captured within the reflection, and just like really push it out like we see in this trailer. I'm a little surprised that they didn't do that, because
Right.
you expect cuts on real-time ray tracing on a console game at 60 FPS, and I think they did a really good job there in terms of like, you still get the car on car reflections, but the more close-up stuff I would have liked to seen more.
Okay.
Also, environment detail. That's another
that's
thing.
another thing.
So there was always this one shot in that reveal trailer that looked so nice, where the camera zooms down like sort of around this turn, and there's like, you get the guardrail there, and there's all these beautifully like placed pieces of foliage and flowers. But the thing that always caught my eye was they got 4 traffic cones sitting there, where they sort of simulate light penetration through the cone, right? So you kind of see like the orange material sort of glow. It's like a subsurface scattering effect, but it's actually just like, semi-transparent, like, I guess rubber, plastic, or whatever the cones are made out of. And that looks phenomenal. But it's just, there's nothing like that in the actual game, right?
Yeah.
Like,
it's
I understand it's
weird.
difficult to do that kind of placement, but given that they're closed circuits, much smaller detail compared to something like Forza Horizon, right? Which I think actually has better environment detail, despite the larger world. That's the kind of stuff I'm bummed out by. Now, I don't want to sound too negative though, because I do still think the game looks really good in its own way, and it's got some good stuff going on. We'll get into that in that comparison video, but those are the things that when you compare it to this trailer, it's kind of like, I'm disappointed that they sort of stepped things down like that, or didn't allow the PC version to push things out a little further.
Yeah. It's like I'm coming a little bit at like looking at Starfield, where and a number of other games where it feels like there's like a heavy priority to get that like console version looking really good towards the end, as good as possible towards the end of the like right before release date. But then PC version is like, okay, we'll release it with a lot of issues and then try and claw back performance, features, and user experience over a number of patches. Which, I think that's kind of what happened with Starfield, and it feels like it is a lot like here. Like some of the stuff like just really wouldn't fly on an Xbox. Like you wouldn't release a setting and an option that just makes the game stutter, right? Like, would you really do that on an Xbox version of a game? I don't think so.
No.
There's stuff like that. It's just like PC, it's just always like they don't care as much. It's so obvious at times in terms of publishing. So yeah.
I think that's a separate issue, but the thing I want to get back to is the concept of how you showcase or debut your big game, right? What you cannot do is to produce assets that the final game does not live up to, right?
You shouldn't do that. It's happened a lot, but
of course, but and the simple solution, right? I'm assuming it's simple. I mean, obviously they had the usual in-engine disclaimer, and this kind of spectacularly proves the point that when you put out a trailer that says in-engine, it could be anything at this point, because the engine is obviously going to be a lot more versatile than the final game code, right? In terms of the amount of features you can deploy, etc. But the easy way out of this is simply to ensure that those features do actually work for the shipping product, and if it's too much for the consoles, put it on PC. Right? It's simple. Why are we still debating this in the year 2023, as Alex would say?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I would also say that when the games are in development, right, things are in flux. It's changing all the time, and I understand.
But based on what we've seen in the final game, those reflections were never going to be on a console, right? Let's talk turkey here. It's beyond the capabilities of the Series X.
By
yes.
far. Yes.
And that should be communicated. You shouldn't be, putting assets out that just don't reflect the final game. But, if it all works on the PC version, just say, work in progress PC version. But make sure those features are actually in the final version of the game. It's all we ask.
It's
You know?
I think even though it seems tempting to like get people excited with a pre-release trailer showing like amazing stuff, and I can imagine why they would want to do that, but it's really something that developers and publishers more accurately need to be very careful with, I think, these days, right? If you really think you can truly absolutely hit that target, it's probably safe, but if it's just like pie in the sky still, it doesn't seem worth the risk, and it's better to more like reduce initial expectations almost and then ramp things up as it gets closer, right? I actually think that gets people talking more these days. They're like, whoa, look how good this looks now, kind of thing.
Absolutely. And it's not as if the game looks bad, right?
No,
The initial
it's great
trailer
looking.
the initial trailer could have been very, very different just based on a realistic assessment of what the final product is actually going to look like. But there was this massive focus on ray tracing. And to be fair, they have got RT working during the
They do.
races.
Yeah.
So, but at least show it as people are likely to experience it. And yeah, the whole concept of scalability and why PC isn't being pushed further, that's one thing, right? And the stuff that I think you were talking about a bit earlier, Alex, is just basically, it goes back to your 13 points on what makes a good PC port that we put out at the beginning of the year, which is, Forza's missing a lot of them, really.
Yeah.
And basically, the concept that you had to spend so long in your video explaining how the menu works,
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
that's mind-bending, isn't it? This is the area of the game that needs to be the most easily understandable and accessible. And I guess my message would be, please just take a look at Days Gone on PC.
Yeah.
That menu system is
yeah.
incredible. Just load it up.
Yeah.
Take a look at it. Make your menu system like that.
I saw that one of the top comments was like, this seems like the menu system sounds like an idea of someone who's like, I'm going to radicalize menu design on PC, but then like you just don't ever go through with it in the end, and you just kind of make some sort of halfway step. Because like the idea of auto settings is actually extremely powerful. Like, what if you just loaded up a game and it looked the best it possibly could and ran at some arbitrary frame rate that you set? You just said like, I want auto 60. That would be amazing if a game did that. But in this game, it doesn't do anything of the sort, at least in my testing. So yeah, a lot of missteps there. And I just hope in the next couple months, to half a year, obviously I don't have any expectations that things go quickly in development, but like I hope there's a lot I hope there's a lot of changes in the PC code, specifically regarding CPU scaling too, because like a game that's been in development for so long, it cannot be so ridiculously single threaded. It's like crazy how single threaded this game is.
Man,
Yeah.
Also the another aspect of the RT stuff I would have liked to have seen adjusted is like being an adjustable like sort of roughness cutoff, right? Because again, that's something that makes the GT7 Reflections so expensive, is that they actually ray trace onto like very rough materials. So like plastics that are like, kind of matte finish, or like really like this kind of like matte paints and everything. You still get the really rough reflections in the replays, which is way more demanding. But, it would have been nice to see it in the replays on Xbox, or just as an option for PC users to kind of have more ray trace reflections across the entire body rather than just the mirror reflections. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It's
All
just
these things.
it's just about the choices they made. And I've said this before, and it's a funny thing. Like, what do you guys think? If you took Forza Motorsport, this game, I think this would probably run fine on a PS5, just like GT7 would easily run on a Series X, right? So it's not
100%.
really, this is not about console hardware. It's just about developer choices, right? That's my view these days. It's
Or
no
publisher
longer about
choices.
that. Or publisher choices, right? So that's kind of what we're at.
Okay. And obviously there are some issues that came into the game. For example, the whole, is it gamma issue or contrast issue?
Oh,
I think I would call it limited. It looks like it's incorrectly limited, because the blacks turn to gray, which to me looks like the mixed up like 16 to 235. I don't know. That's what it looked like to me.
Yeah. I mean, it impacted our preview footage, I think.
Yeah.
And obviously there's this lamentable situation with Destin at IGN, who put out his own Forza video this week that had to be withdrawn because it was impacted by that bug
Yeah, I
through
feel
no
bad
fault
for him.
of his own.
No,
Let's
not at all
let's
his fault.
point out.
Yeah.
Although he seemed to get a lot of hassle for it. So yeah, this was kind of like something which we were puzzling over right from day one, really, which is that the contrast seemed to be a bit off. And it was actually Oliver who basically hammered down what the problem was at the end, although you, Alex, basically managed to sort of get closer to the truth of what was happening there.
Yeah.
But basically, you visit a menu and it puts the color balance out of whack or the contrast.
I guess it became clear once you tested it on PC, right? Because PC doesn't have that, and you put them side by side, and you're like, wait a minute.
Yeah, I just put them side by side, and then I lined up the clips on the timeline, and I was just like, oh my god, the loading screen is gray instead of black. That's when I knew something was really, really wrong.
Which, by the way, as a fun aside, for those doing video editing on an LCD monitor, you might not have noticed it.
I know. Oh my god!
Because we use OLEDs as our editing monitors, we actually get that perfect black, right? Whereas the raised black level in Forza just looks like LCD backlight. So like those using an LCD probably wouldn't notice at all.
Yeah, if you're like QAing this game on an LCD, you just be like, oh yeah, looks like it usually does.
Exactly, it wouldn't change at all.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of peripheral issues here that are taking the sheen of what is actually a really strong release. So, but fingers crossed all of this can be sorted out. But I do think that there are genuine questions that need to be asked about marketing. And it was especially disappointing when, they were talking about a couple of years back, the Forza Horizon 5 in-game footage, which had ray tracing that wasn't in the actual game. So, transparency is important, but also, making sure that the authenticity of the assets that you're putting out is going to be borne out by the final product.